Well, the president's proposed new regulatory rules would give the Federal Reserve more power to oversee banks and other financial institutions and create a new agency to oversee consumer financial products. Bank lobbyists already lining up on Capitol Hill to give members an earful. We've pulled one out of line to talk with us right now. David Hirschmann leads the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Center for Capital Markets Competitiveness. David, before we get to you, Senate Banking Committee Chairman Chris Dodd yesterday slammed business groups like yours that don't support regulatory changes. Let's hear what he had to say.
When I pick up the morning newspaper and I read the first headline here, that fault lines emerge as industry groups blast plan to create consumer agency. What planet are you living on? The very people who created the damn mess are the ones now arguing that consumers ought not to be protected. They're the people who paid this price.
All right. What planet are you living on? What do you think of Chairman Dodd's remarks?
Well, we've been calling for comprehensive reform of our capital markets for a long time, well before the current crisis. For us, it's a question not of if or when, but how. And we see three fundamental problems: ineffective regulators, regulators that don't talk to each other, and regulators that ultimately miss to gaps and are too layered. For us, the real challenge is how do you best achieve that? So we differ with the chairman only on how you achieve consumer protection, not on whether consumers need to be protected.
Well, let's start with some of the basic parts of the president's plan. The Federal Reserve as the overall regulator, the idea of maintaining the current regulation scenario, the number of bank regulators for the most part except for the OTS. Do you have any problem with that?
Well, look, that's our basic challenge here. You know, we think that the administration has identified some clear gaps and is attempting to fill them. And we know that they want regulators to coordinate with each other. But they've avoided the question of how to make the current regulators more effective. And they've dodged that by adding two new layers to the regulatory structure. A new layer on top for large institutions at the Federal Reserve and a new layer at the bottom for consumer interactions. Both are useful. Systemic risk is important. Consumer protection is important. But I don't think we can avoid to just have new layers on the current creaky, old, antiquated system. We need to not just fill the cracks. We need to fix the foundation.
All right. You're the contractor. How do you fix it?
Well, you start by making sure that you have the most effective regulators possible with your current set of regulators. You need regulators that can provide clear answers, yes or no, to business, that can protect consumers. You need regulators that have much more expertise in what has become really dramatically different markets from the days when these regulators were set up 75 years ago. You need regulators that are forced to talk to each other so that businesses can't forum shop between regulators and create arbitrage. You need to make sure that responsible innovation, good innovation, happens within the regulatory structure rather than outside the regulatory structure.
But those all sound like things that the administration would want in their plan, too. They would want effective regulators. They would want expertise. What would you change about the president's plan?
What I would do is, rather than adding two new layers, I would look at how do you make sure that we achieve the goals we all agree on by fixing the existing regulatory structure. How do you make the SEC better? How do you make the CFTC better? How do you make the bank regulators better? How do you make sure that they work well together so you regulate like things in similar ways? That would achieve, in our view, much more effective consumer protection, much stronger regulation of markets, a much smarter and effective regulation of markets than simply adding two new layers, which in our view perpetuates some of the problems with the current system.
You obviously don't like the consumer protection, but it's fairly obvious that Congress is united in the need for a systemic regulator of some sort. If not the Fed, if not this system, how would you handle that?
I do think there's a need for somebody at the top of the regulatory structure that has access to all the right data, that can make sure we look in every dark corner and identify systemic risks. We agree with that. What we don't agree with is that that regulator needs to designate a small group of large institutions as permanently too big to fail. 2 hedge funds, 3 mutual funds, 4 insurance companies, every large bank, and with the implicit guarantee that if they fail, the taxpayers will come in to rescue them.
All right.
That creates competitive disadvantages and ultimately isn't the best way to address systemic risk.
I have about 20 seconds. Very quickly, is Congress open to changes? Do you think this bill is going to be amended? Can you get some of your requests in?
Absolutely. At the principles level, we agree, but the devil is in the details. This is step one. It goes to Congress next. and both the House and Senate will have their say. And I'm confident we will emerge within the next 18 months with a comprehensive, modern regulatory structure that will really not just fix what happened yesterday, but will look forward.
David Hirschmann at the Chamber of Commerce, thank you very much for coming in today.